The main characters of today's case are a middle-class family of 4 living in the suburbs of Hong Kong. They led a peaceful, simple life and had no conflicts with anyone. However, in just one night, everything changed completely. All 4 family members mysteriously disappeared. No one knew where they had gone or whether they were alive or dead. Through deep investigation, the police uncovered a horrifying truth. The entire family had been brutally murdered in their own home. Who committed this terrible massacre? What reason could drive someone to act so cruelly, not even sparing the children? Let's explore this case with crime documentary files. The victim's family consisted of 4 people: the father, Tan Chenghui, 43, the mother Tang Enyi, 34, the older daughter, Tan Xiaowen, 10, and the younger daughter, Tan Xiaoying, 7. The family of 4 lived in a tin-roofed house in Pingshe Village, Takuling. Chenghui and Enyi were a couple with stable jobs. Chenghui had worked as an office employee at the Chinese University of Hong Kong for over 2 decades, while Enyi worked at a stationery supply company. Though not wealthy, this family of 4 enjoyed a happy, peaceful life. However, July 5, 2009, became the cruel turning point that erased their peaceful family portrait. All 4 members mysteriously disappeared, making everything completely different. July 6th, a regular Monday, was no longer ordinary. Although it was close to summer vacation, the 2 sisters Xiaowen and Xiaoying still had to attend school. Chenghui and Enyi still had to go to work as usual. Following their daily routine, they would take their children to elementary school. Then Enyi would be dropped off at her company, and Chenghui would head to the Chinese university to start his workday. But that day, neither Chenghui nor Enyi showed up for work. No matter how many times they were called, no one answered their phones. Their colleagues found this very strange, as both were very responsible people who had never missed work without prior notice. Therefore, their colleagues called them throughout the morning, worried that something might have happened. They kept calling, but no one answered. Until around 1 p.m., finally someone answered Chenghui's phone. But it wasn't Chenghui. It was a man with a rural accent. When Chenghui's colleague asked if something was wrong, the man with the rural accent said the whole family had gone to Dongguan for vacation and quickly hung up. After hearing this, Chenghui's colleague felt something was very unusual. If he had planned a vacation, why hadn't he asked for leave in advance? Moreover, Chenghui was a very responsible person, dedicated to his work, and always made clear arrangements. The colleague who called Chenghui shared the incident with other colleagues. After discussion, everyone felt the situation wasn't simple and reported it to the police for help. Had something happened to them? And who was the man who answered Chenghui's phone? After receiving the report, the police quickly began investigating in Pingshe Village. However, due to the village's large area, determining the exact location of Chenghui's family wasn't easy. Only after asking several local residents did investigators find the exact location of the house. Upon arrival, police immediately noticed that Chenghui's house was in a very isolated and secluded location. There was only a used computer recycling facility nearby, and a bit further away lived an elderly woman alone. There was no one else around. The first thing investigators noticed was that Chenghui's car was still parked in its spot, suggesting he might still be in the house. They decided to call into the house, hoping to make contact with the family. However, despite repeated calls, there was no response whatsoever. During the investigation, police discovered a man nearby. They approached to ask about his identity and purpose in the area. The man introduced himself as Wang, a local resident of Pingshe Village. He said the Tan family had gone on vacation to Dongguan, so they weren't home at the moment. When police asked him how he knew the family had gone to Dongguan for vacation, this man said the homeowner's cousin had told him so, and the cousin had instructed him to tell the police the same thing. Therefore, the police found the situation very suspicious and asked Mr. Wang to take them to find Chenghui's cousin. Mr. Wang was very cooperative and led them to find Chenghui's cousin. Since the cousin's residence was just across a road, it didn't take long before the police found Chenghui's cousin. His name was Xu Shengqi. It turned out he wasn't from Hong Kong, but from Zhongshan, Guangdong, and was visiting Hong Kong on a tourist visa at the time. Police asked Shengqi where Cheng Hui's entire family had gone. He said that on July 4th, the family had returned to mainland China to handle some financial matters. They would normally return before the children's school day, meaning they would be back the next day. Cheng Hui had instructed him that if he didn't return in time and colleagues called asking why he wasn't at work, to tell them he had urgent business in Dongguan. Notably, the man with the rural accent who answered Cheng Hui's phone was Shengqi himself. After hearing his statement, police asked him to lead them into Cheng Hui's house. Shengqi's attitude was very cooperative, but he appeared extremely worried, repeatedly asking about his cousin's situation. When entering the house, police initially didn't notice anything unusual. The house looked just like any other family's home. However, upon careful observation, they discovered bloodstains in various locations, on the living room wall beside the bed. These traces made police suspect something unprecedented had occurred. Immediately, investigators called in the homicide squad to take charge. The investigation team conducted a detailed and careful search of the entire tin house. Meanwhile, they also sent people to Enyi's workplace and the children's school to verify whether the three had gone to work and school. Another important task was checking immigration records to determine whether all four had actually returned to mainland China as claimed by Cheng Hui's cousin. After investigation, police discovered that the last person to see Cheng Hui was his mother. Although Cheng Hui's mother didn't live with them, she lived very close, in a nursing home in Pingche Village. On the morning of July 5th, Cheng Hui had visited his mother at the nursing home, leaving at 11:30 a.m. From this, it could be deduced that Cheng Hui certainly couldn't have returned to China on July 4th. After police searched inside Cheng Hui's house, they discovered more bloodstains in various places, such as on the living room wall, beside the bed in the bedroom, etc. They also found a blood-stained women's shirt and a rubber hose with blood on it, as well as Enyi's hometown return card and ID card. Moreover, immigration records showed that all four members of Cheng Hui's family had not left Hong Kong at all. At this point, police officially decided to arrest Shengqi. The arrest was prompted by strong suspicions about his involvement in the disappearance, especially after investigators discovered wounds on his fingers. Shengqi quickly explained that these wounds were from helping his cousin with house repairs caused by nails and screws. He still insisted that his cousin had told him they had returned to China. However, from various circumstances at the scene, police no longer believed his statements. Shengqi was immediately taken to the station for questioning. There, he maintained an uncooperative attitude, insisting he knew nothing and continuously expressing concern for his cousin's family. Beyond that, he didn't say a word about the incident. Faced with this situation, police had to shift their investigation strategy. They hoped that through other methods, they could find the whereabouts of Cheng Hui's entire family and rescue them in time. Each passing hour increased concerns about the fate of the four victims. The most effective and direct method to track missing persons is to monitor their spending activities. By tracing financial transactions, police hoped to determine Cheng Hui and his family's location. During the investigation, police discovered an important clue. At 3:02 p.m. on July 5th, someone attempted to withdraw money using Enyi's Visa credit card at an ATM at Shengshui Station. However, due to entering the wrong password, the card was retained by the ATM. When checking the ATM security camera, police were surprised to discover that the card user was Cheng Hui's cousin. Additionally, police found Cheng Hui and Enyi's mobile phones at the cousin's residence. This evidence helped investigators build a plausible theory about the case. Based on the collected evidence, police deduced that if Cheng Hui's family had indeed met with foul play, the incident likely occurred between 11:30 a.m. on July 5th, after Cheng Hui visited his mother, until 3:02 p.m. the same day when his cousin used Enyi's credit card. This brief period of less than 4 hours became the focus of the investigation. What could Cheng Hui's cousin have done during this time? And what happened to the family during those fateful hours? Calculating the time from when Cheng Hui left the nursing home to return home and when his cousin went out to withdraw money from Pingche Village, it can be estimated that if the family of four truly met with foul play, it likely occurred between noon and 2 p.m. Could Shenki really have made 4 people disappear in such a short 2-hour period? Before investigating further, let's learn about Shenki's background. He was 42 years old, from Huangpu Town, Zhongshan. He was married in China and had a son and daughter. In China, Shengqi mainly worked as a construction worker and motorcycle taxi driver. Since 2003, he frequently applied for two-way visas to Hong Kong under the pretext of visiting relatives. When in Hong Kong, Shengqi lived temporarily at his uncle's house in Pingshe Village, where police found him. Of course, Shengqi didn't come to Hong Kong to visit relatives but to work illegally. Because Cheng Hui had inherited a tin house from his father, Cheng Hui wanted to renovate it to make it more livable. Therefore, after discussion between the two cousins, Shengqi applied for a two-way visa to Hong Kong, staying from 2 weeks to 3 months each time. They had agreed that Cheng Hui would pay his cousin Shengqi 300 Hong Kong dollars, approximately 38 USD per day, to help with house repairs. The daily wage of 300 Hong Kong dollars was below average in Hong Kong, but compared to Shengqi earning only a few dollars a day in China, it was much better. Moreover, Cheng Hui saw that Shengqi was very lazy in China, often not working, so he wanted him to come to Hong Kong to focus on earning money. Cheng Hui knew his cousin was building a house back home and needed several 100,000 yuan to complete it. If Shengqi worked in Hong Kong, he could earn several $1,000s monthly for house construction. Additionally, while Shengqi was building his house, since they had to demolish the old house and had nowhere to stay, Cheng Hui was kind enough to let Shengqi's entire family stay in his ancestral home in their hometown. Logically, the two cousins had a very good relationship. So had the police misunderstood Shengqi? But unexpectedly, when police showed Shengqi the image of him using his sister-in-law Enyi's credit card at the ATM, Shengqi, who had been silent until then, finally admitted his involvement in his cousin Cheng Hui's family's disappearance. He even said, "Officers, I accidentally killed them. Please give me a chance." Of course, the police couldn't and had no right to give him a chance. So the police asked Shengqi, "Where is your cousin's family now?" But whether it was because Shengqi heard the police wouldn't give him a chance or not, he refused to reveal details. Therefore, police could only continue searching around Cheng Hui's house to see if they could find all 4 family members. After all, they only had Shengqi's one-sided confession at this point, not knowing if the family had truly disappeared or met with foul play. Even if they had met with foul play, without finding the victims' bodies, it would be difficult to prosecute. From the time of arrest, after more than 10 hours of interrogation, until 4 a.m. on July 7th, Shengqi finally confessed to what happened. He admitted to police that after taking the lives of his cousin's entire family, he had buried all 4 people in their 4,000-square-foot garden. Therefore, police immediately requested firefighters' assistance to excavate where Shengqi had buried the bodies. Like typical cement-related murder cases, due to cement's hardness, excavating the bodies without damaging them was very difficult. First using drills to break through the surface cement layer, then using smaller tools to gradually dig out the soil inside. Indeed, Shengqi hadn't lied. Police discovered a child's hair. After several hours of effort, police finally found the first victim's body, one of the 2 girls. Finally, the entire process took 13 hours to excavate all 4 victims' bodies. They were buried on top of each other in a hole 5 feet deep, 8 feet long, and 8 feet wide. At the bottom was Father Cheng Hui, above him was Mother Enyi, and on top were the 2 daughters. All 4 bodies were in an extremely tragic condition. After being brought up, forensics conducted examinations of the victims' bodies. Cheng Hui had at least dozens of stab wounds, which were the cause of death. 65 stab wounds were found on his body, mainly concentrated on his chest, abdomen, and back. There were 13 stab and cut wounds on his arms and legs, including 3 wounds on his palms. Enyi's wrists were bound to her neck with 2 yellow cords. Her back was tied with an additional metal wire, and her toes were also bound with metal wire. Her mouth was stuffed with a white tank top, and her head was wrapped in multiple layers of different materials. The innermost layer was a blue sweater, outside which metal wire and tape were wrapped around her mouth and neck. Outside the blue sweater was a black plastic bag, also wrapped with metal wire. The outermost layer was a white plastic bag. further wrapped with an electrical cord. Enyi's head and forehead had 6 wounds caused by blunt force trauma. However, these 6 wounds were not the cause of death. She died from suffocation. The older daughter, Xiaowen, was also bound. Her chin and neck were wrapped with tape, and there was a long wound on her face. Her arms were severely twisted behind her back, then bound to her neck with a yellow cord. Her toes were tied with a yellow cord, and her body was completely distorted. The youngest daughter, Xiaoying's body was placed in a plastic bag, which was then tied with a yellow cord. When discovered, Xiaoying was curled up in the plastic bag, head at the bottom, eyes sealed with tape, wrapped from her eyes to her throat and lower jaw. Both hands were also tied behind her back, and both legs were bound with a yellow cord. Her cause of death was the same as her mother's: suffocation. So why did Sheng Qi act so cruelly toward his cousin's family, despite Cheng Wei treating him well, not even sparing the 2 children under 10 years old? And how could he alone kill 4 people? From when Cheng Wei visited his mother until police arrested Sheng Qi was only 25 to 26 hours. Could Sheng Qi really have killed people, bound them, dug holes, poured cement, buried bodies, and cleaned up the scene in that time? After Sheng Qi pointed out where he had buried his cousin's entire family, he began to confess everything. Sheng Qi said he actually had a relationship with his sister-in-law Enyi. He roughly told police that he had maintained proper boundaries, only going as far as hugging and kissing, with no further relations. Perhaps he had harbored secret love for many years without speaking. But about a year before the incident, while the 2 were having an affair in the house, they were discovered by his niece. The niece then told her father about this, but he and Enyi had denied it. Although Cheng Hui didn't believe them, because there was no evidence, and thinking perhaps the children had seen wrong, he still let him continue working there. But after that incident, the relationship between the 2 had changed. On the day of the murders, for some unknown reason, after Cheng Hui returned home from visiting his mother, he confronted him about why he had seduced his wife. After asking, the 2 got into an argument. As the conversation became more heated, he grabbed a knife and repeatedly stabbed his cousin until he stopped responding. By this point, Cheng Hui had stopped breathing. He then went to find his sister-in-law, who was cooking in the kitchen, to tell her what had happened and discuss how to handle it. But after hearing this, she reacted very emotionally, repeatedly screaming and throwing things. He said that to calm her down, he tied her up. But because she was screaming, the 2 nieces came running. When the children saw him tying up their mother, they also screamed and immediately ran to their room, closing the door. Because the 2 children were continuously screaming, he didn't want others to discover what was happening, so he broke down the door and tied up both children. One can hardly imagine what the 2 sisters were feeling in that room at that moment. Sheng Qi insisted that from beginning to end, he never intended to kill his sister-in-law and 2 nieces. His cousin's death was due to a moment of rage, while the deaths of his sister-in-law and 2 nieces were just accidents. Because when he tied the 3 of them up, they were still alive. Afterward, he took his sister-in-law's credit card to withdraw money but couldn't succeed. When he returned to the crime scene, he realized he had forgotten to tape their mouths shut. When he remembered, it was too late, as all 3 were already dead. At that point, he didn't know what to do. Then he saw the food his sister-in-law had been cooking in the kitchen, and since he was hungry, he ate before thinking about what to do next. After eating, he thought about burying all 4 people, so he started digging a hole in the garden. After 2 to 3 hours, he had dug a large hole. Then he showered and cleaned up the blood at the scene before returning to his uncle's house to rest. The next morning, July 6th, he went to order cement early. Sheng Qi said he even paid extra to the store for quick delivery. Then he threw his cousin's body in first, followed by his sister-in-law, and finally their 2 daughters. After throwing in the bodies, he poured in sand, and finally covered it with a layer of cement. Actually, while he was doing all this, his cousin's and sister-in-law's phones kept ringing. At 1 p.m., after handling everything and thinking of an excuse, he finally answered his cousin's phone and told the caller that the family had gone to Dongguan. This was Sheng Qi's confession to the police. Of course, this was only Sheng Qi's side of the story. The truth still needed to be verified through police investigation. Let's look at the evidence the prosecutor presented in court to see if the truth matched Sheng Qi's account. A year after the incident, on October 28, 2010, the case officially went to trial. Sheng Qi was charged with 4 counts of murder. The prosecutor pointed out that Sheng Qi's version of the story about his relationship with the female victim leading to the murders was not credible. The prosecutor argued that he told this story to cover up his evil nature. In fact, Sheng Qi's motive for the crime was money. The prosecutor revealed that at the time of the incident, because Sheng Qi was building a house back home and didn't have enough money, he had asked to borrow money from his cousin Cheng Hui but was refused. Therefore, Sheng Qi killed and robbed in a fit of anger. After killing his cousin's entire family, he had stolen his sister-in-law's credit card, 2 mobile phones, and police later found many electronic devices in the black box on Sheng Qi's bicycle, including a PSP gaming device, digital camera, HD receiver, surveillance camera equipment, and recording device. These were all evidence showing Sheng Qi acted for money. The prosecutor also argued that the way the 3 female victims were bound showed he intended to take their lives, meaning he had murderous intent. Moreover, this also clearly showed Sheng Qi had carefully planned everything. Faced with these accusations, Sheng Qi continued to insist that he truly had a relationship with his sister-in-law, and those feelings were real. In court, he openly praised his sister-in-law for having a beautiful figure, being very attractive and feminine. He also stated that in the 3 to 4 years before the incident, he had come to Hong Kong at least 100 times. His sister-in-law would often deliberately take time off work, and the two would have secret relations when his cousin wasn't home. He said he initially had no plan to steal the credit card and his cousin's property. On the contrary, his cousin owed him 80,000 Hong Kong dollars, approximately $10,200 for house repairs. Only after the killings did he think of taking these items. In court, Sheng Qi, through his defense lawyer, complained that he had been treated unfairly after his arrest. First, before being formally arrested, he had been handcuffed and guarded in a room at the police station for half an hour. During the interrogation at the police station, he was stripped, attacked in his private areas, had his hair pulled, and was beaten. Additionally, Sheng Qi's defense lawyer said that when Sheng Qi requested water at the police station, officers spat in his water bottle. Another officer, upon seeing this, added, "He doesn't deserve to drink." Regarding the affair Sheng Qi described, police confirmed that Enyi had only taken 6 days off work for personal reasons. Finally, after nearly a month of trial, on November 23, 2010, the case reached its verdict. The jury unanimously found the defendant Sheng Qi guilty of 3 counts of murder out of the 4 murder charges, including the murders of Cheng Hui, Enyi, and the younger daughter Xiao Ying. For the older daughter Xiaowen's death, he was found guilty of manslaughter. The cause of the older daughter Xiaowen's death was the only case among the 4 victims that was not determined to be murder, but rather suffocation. From this horrifying case, we can clearly see the cruel and inhumane nature of the perpetrator Sheng Qi. Despite being trusted and thoroughly helped by his cousin Cheng Hui, from employment to accommodation, Sheng Qi still heartlessly murdered his cousin's entire family in a brutal manner. It's especially heartbreaking that the victims included 2 innocent children under 10 years old. This case is a painful lesson about misplaced trust, while also serving as a warning about potential dangers lurking within even seemingly close relationships. And that's our case for today. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.